Welcome, guys, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Vitriol. I think that is the correct pronounce, Vitriol, correct?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Well, for this new album, Suffer and Become, and obviously more things related to the metal world in general. So we'll start by asking how has been the band during the last years, because your first album, Debate from the Truth of Cowardice, was released in 2019, and now 5 years later. No, 4 years later, no, 5 years later, this new album is right now.
It's about four and 2 months, 4 years and 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry, go ahead.
how was the band during the last 5 years?
Good, man. I mean, it was, there are a lot of factors as to why it took a little over 4 years for the album to come out. I mean, we toured really hard on that first album. We toured as hard as we could. We did about, I think over 10 full tours on that album, which is when you include the COVID lockdown, that kept us really busy. So we didn't even start working hard on the album until the lockdown happened. And then, yeah, it's been a trip, man. 4 years, a lot of things have changed. We've gone through a bunch of different members. We're a very different band now than we were 4 or 5 years ago, but all onward and upward, all improvements, I think.
Okay, nice to hear. One thing that I saw on the Vitriol career is that the band grew very fast, because since the first album, obviously, and even so, since the first EP, Pain Will Define Their Death, you are stay with Everlasting Spear Records at that time. Now your first album go directly with one of the biggest labels, Century Media, and now you stay with him from 2 albums. And I saw, and also I saw a lot of tours with Vitriol, supporting acts, a lot of interviews, a lot of good reviews from the first album, and more things. So how do you describe this? I think the success career that Vitriol has until now, since the beginning.
Yeah.
The audio, I lost the audio.
It's calling here. Got to cancel out. There we go. In that, I like to say that whereas a lot of bands, they'll put out their initial material when they have it, when they've cooked it up. I knew what I wanted to do with Vitriol from the beginning. I knew that I wanted to take it as far as I could. And I knew that would require a sound that is fully realized enough that hopefully it cannot be ignored. So what we did, I mean, Adam and I, when I say we spent roughly over 7 years crafting the sound that ended up on the first album. So we like to say that we basically wrote our first 3 albums in private, whereas most bands would write multiple albums and put them out and grow in the public eye. We decided to keep it all under wraps and just discard any music that we didn't think lived up to the ultimate goal. So I attribute it to that. I think that our first album was kind of like our 4th album, with how much material we had written behind the scenes. But because that was the first impression, it got people's attention, which I'm very grateful for.
Now what? Yeah, that's a lot of attention, because you did a lot of tours with the name of Vitriol. I saw a lot of things, the name in a lot of media, and also one thing that for me is very interesting. What did you decide to change the names from Those Who Lie Beneath to the name Vitriol? Because you obviously released your first album. If we doesn't count the change of name or from first one to the new one, you already have 3 albums with an Awakening too, because you and Adam are still on the band.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think the original idea was to carry on with the name, for more practical reasons. We'd done stuff with the band. People knew the name. So when we effectively broke up, I used to say that the other guys quit, but we kind of just, all broke up. And then Adam decided to come along with me with what I was trying to do. So I don't think I was keeping the name for the right reason. I was just trying to maintain the sense of like progress that we had achieved. And when the Antichrist EP came out, it was very clear to me that it was a different band. It's not the same band, not only in terms of the membership, but in terms of the philosophy, the sound, why the band does what it does, what it's striving to do. And I just thought it was inappropriate to continue calling it Those Who Lie Beneath, because it wasn't anymore. So that's when I decided to change the name. And it was about 2 weeks after I released the first EP. So technically it's a new band, but I just flirted with the idea of keeping the name for a little bit.
Okay. A detail that I find interesting about Vitriol is that both albums flirt with the brutal stuff, because as you can see, we can hear the music is more in some ways it's like the brutal death metal, but when you hear completed rhymes, it's like death metal. So it's very difficult to understand the situation, but it's good. So even and I saw that a lot of reviewers and a lot of people say that I saw a previous interview with you that the band is more death metal, no brutal death metal. It's death metal in all ways. So for you, what do you decide to attach the music to the Vitriol from to death metal, and not put like the brutal death metal, perhaps?
I see what you mean. Yeah. Well, for me, I think Vitriol is such a hybrid and amalgamation of the aspects of all the extreme genres that I love. So if it were up to me, if I were to brand Vitriol as something like just a subgenre that I would stand behind, it would be extreme metal. Like that's what I like to refer to the band as, because to me that's truest to the value of the band, whereas I'm trying to distill the most extreme parts of the subgenres that speak to me, whether it be black metal, death metal, slam, whatever, hardcore even. Phyllis, I think if I have to use an existing one, death metal makes sense, just because it's such I don't know. Yeah, brutal. It's definitely brutal, but I think that there's, like, even with this new album, there's a lot of black metal influence on this new album. So I just think brutal death metal wouldn't really, when I think of brutal death metal, I think of like Brodequin and Disgorge and stuff like that. And I don't think we're like that. We also have like fairly conventional song structures, which is funny to say because our music's so overwhelming, but we really lean into the whole like verse, chorus, verse thing, because for me, that makes the really extreme music more palatable. Whereas, so you can actually, sorry, I'm kind of going all over the place here. To me, what defines a lot of brutal death metal is like a linear approach. It makes it really unpredictable and intense. And for me, I'm trying to infuse more like replay value in our music. Whereas like I want hooks, but I don't want without sacrificing the brutality. And that's hard to do. But so, yeah, I think the short answer to your question, I think extreme metal is the most appropriate. I don't think death metal really hits the nail. If someone told me like, you got to check out this death metal band, and I listened to Us, never hearing Us before, I'd be like, I'm not sure if this is death metal, but it's definitely like more fucking extreme.
Yes, for me too. When I hear for the first time the second album, the first album, I always denote that it's not that metal, because you touch your some rhymes, some schemes are playing with death metal stuff, but in general it's more extreme because you use more, some parts grindcore, some parts black metal. When you use a lot of stuff that the fans, when I hear for the first time these styles on the 80s, that we denoted that this is extreme for all of us. This is extreme. So and either way, that's the press. So talking about now, especially for this new software in Become, one of the details that for me is catch my attention in all many ways is the cover art. The cover art from Dylan Humphreys is a really a good one. So who came with the idea to create this cover art? It was perhaps with your sketches, or perhaps with the Adam sketches, or perhaps you gave Dylan all music and he created a part of the music, this amazing cover art.
A little bit of closer to the latter, whereas the painting was actually I don't want to say he and I, it wasn't collaborative, but he started developing the concept for the painting the same time I started working on the album. So this painting, he's a close friend of mine, which I'm very lucky. He, about a little over 3 years ago, he started this painting. So while I was developing the lyrics and the demos, we kind of say Dylan's like the fifth member of Vitriol, like the secret Vitriol member, because he hears everything as I'm making it. Sometimes he hears shit before my bandmates do. And so basically the process was me feeding him music, lyrical concepts, us talking about what that meant. And then he came up with the concept of the skeleton and the snakes. And there's actually a lot more to the painting. It's a landscape painting. It's a big rectangle, not a square. That square is just the middle of the painting. And then, he'd be like, what do we have in the desert? Do you think we should have like a lion, a couple lions? Do you think it should just be desolate? And we would just have these long conversations about what makes the most sense for the cover. But all of the actual conceptualizations and the all of the figures present in the painting were Dylan's idea, that were inspired by my creative work on the album.
Okay. Also, other detail that when talking about now, especially again from the label, well, you are with Century Media, one of the biggest labels, as I mentioned, around the world, especially in the metal world. So, and also with this kind of aspect, with a lot of gigs that I saw with the name Vitriol on it. So I remember awards from the fans, usually the things that when a band enter to the main level, to the mainstream level, like Century Media, automatically this band become a mainstream band. Obviously, and where you with your kind of announced that a lot of gigs happen during the year and since the beginning since the 2019, since your first album to now, you're still playing a lot of times and more shows, more festivals, etc., etc. Did you still consider it as an underground metal band, or perhaps with the support of Century Media and this kind of tours, perhaps you are enter with big things with a mainstream metal band?
The hope is, the hope of Vitriol was always to be able to champion the underground at more of a mainstream level, because I knew, being so passionate about the underground, this is a better way of answering the question. I remember I saw anyone who remembers like Behemoth in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, on the I think around the Demigod album when that came out. I remember seeing Behemoth touring on Ozfest. You had Behemoth playing songs off of Demigod, sharing the stage with bands like, Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson. And that was a really important moment in my career as a musician, because it showed me that something was possible. It showed me that with enough hard work, commitment to an unwaveringness, an unwavering commitment to your sound, and you're willing to work that hard, that you can take a sound that extreme and bring it to the masses. And that was so inspiring for me. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to take all the stuff that I love about the underground, the hyper blasting and the fucking, the trash can snare and the guttural vote and the extreme, all of these really extreme elements, and do them well enough and make them listenable enough that people who would go out and see, maybe go out and see like the Black Dahlia murder might also be interested in Vitriol. And that is, I like the idea of being kind of like a gateway into the underground for people, so that's the hope, is like to never lose that championing of the underground, like the extremity, but work hard enough to pull it out of the underground, so to speak. And not everyone's going to support that. Some people think everything underground should remain in the underground, but I disagree.
Okay. There is a detail that many new, old, and now bands begin to release new productions. You are releasing a new album also, but there are very few people who have bands with new productions that consume the new productions from other bands, especially. And also, I saw a lot of complaints about the labels that says that if you are in a band, support the new bands. That's normally because the new bands supporting your stuff, this kind of stuff. And also, this kind of bands, music fans only consume reissues now. It's very normal because, as you can see now, I think the 4 era from Black Sabbath from Tony Martin was reissued in vinyl, all with different colors, etc. So what do you think about now the new bands or the old bands, and then also the underground bands are just consuming the old material or reissue material and know the new things? Perhaps a band likes Vitriol but not consume the CD or vinyl, just consume Spotify. And even this person has a band.
So just so I'm clear on the question, are you asking about how do I feel about people only listening to the older stuff or only buying like physicals of the stuff?
Yes. So I mean, I will refresh this. I will recap this question. So,
thank you.
What's your point of view? What's your point of view about the bands, people that just consume reissues, old material, or trying to buy on Discos GS the old stuff, and when they have a band, they don't consume other bands, and they want, and a curious thing happened. This new band put in social media, please support our band to do more albums. But it's curious that this band don't support other bands.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, it's an interesting time in metal, and I think it's good. I have my own ideas as to why people are reaching back to the old stuff, and I think it's not too different from the motivations that made me start Vitriol, which was, I think that especially in metal, in the late 2000s, early 2010s, I think it started losing with all the new bands. Metal became very athletic. It became very like over technical, and kind of the soul, in my opinion, like the soul, the heart, the fire, the anger kind of started getting washed out of the music. You could say some of the more like aesthetic qualities of music. And I think that's leaves people wanting something, and they don't really know what, they're like, I'm not getting what I want out of this music. So I think what we're seeing a big, everything is kind of a circle. So we're seeing people reaching back to the old stuff to figure out, like, where did we go wrong? You know what I mean? What's great about this stuff that is missing from the new stuff? I don't think people are thinking that when they're like listening to the old shit, but I think that's really what's going on, like especially this old school death metal revival, the second wave black metal revival, all this stuff. People are reaching back to their roots to say, okay, we went pretty far off base. Let's recenter, let's refocus. Where do we go now? And for me, that was kind of the same thing with Vitriol, but I didn't want to have to pick and choose. I want to have my cake and eat it too. Like, I want I want to hear the future. I want to hear what's next, but I also want that fire and that passion that I heard, that I fell in love with from like the, 90s death metal, even early 2000s death metal, I think was still very good. 2000, 2001, 2002. Wasn't until about, in my opinion, about 2003, 2005 that it all just kind of started going like that, as far as like the mainstream stuff goes. But so supporting bands, I mean, it is what it is. Like, support bands if you think they're good. Don't if you don't. I don't agree with like having some sort of obligation to metal bands just because they're a metal band. Like, I'm not that tribal in that way. Like, I don't believe in the whole like brothers in metal thing. Like, I don't, I treat everyone on an individual basis. And if like, I don't know, if your band, if I don't like your band, I'm not gonna support it any more than any other genre band I didn't like. But with that being said, I am really passionate about promoting new bands that I'm excited about, because I think ultimately that's the most important thing. I always want to know what's next.
Okay, nice to hear. Very interesting question, very interesting answer. So an issue that you mentioned is the quality of the bands from the beginning to their last album. It's normally so, because many bands begin to improve at the recording and the composing. It's normally that when you record the first time, you are more cavernous, more caveman. That's normally because you don't know very well the instrument. It's your first steps. But then when your first album, your third, second album, you start to grow up as a musician, as a composer, and that is normal, completely normal. But because a lot of musicians practice a lot for have better recordings, they get more better instruments, this kind of stuff. But at the same time, the fans start to lose interest because some bands lose that cavernous sound that become cavernous sound and become better musicians. It's not his fault of the musicians. It's the normal way to in life. It's normal way to life to get better in each album anyway. So what do you think about this process? Do you think that this cavernous stuff lose when you are getting more professional?
That's a really good question, really interesting question, and a big one. I think, where do I start? I'm gonna try to keep this tight because I can, as you can tell, I can talk a lot. I'm sorry. All right, so I think there are ways. How do I say this? All right, production aesthetics in metal is such a big conversation. So there are better ways and worse ways to refine your sound as you develop, especially as a metal band. To me, it's always, and this is why I think it's a huge problem that art is like a big no word in metal. You say art, if you're like, oh, bro, it's just riffs and black, like, get out of here with that. Get out of here with that pretentious bullshit. It's like, that's fine. You can like not like that talking in that way. That's fine. But if you don't acknowledge that what we're doing is artistic and you just see it as a craft, then you're not going to consider the why of what you're doing. What I mean by that is, why do we like a cavernous production? Why? Like, why do, when we hear that, we think, ooh, this makes me feel something in a more sincere way than this thing does? Why? Like, you got to ask. And the answer to that question is because of an artistic intention. That cavernous sound isn't there just to be bad. Like a lot of early black metal didn't sound bad just because the technology was limited. It's a part of it. Mm-hmm. But it sounds, and it doesn't sound bad just to sound bad. It sounds that way because that particular sound makes you feel something very specific. Now, as you refine that sound just for the sake of trying to achieve an objectively better sound, more clarity, you can hear the parts more. Well, now you're losing any kind of artistic guidance. You just want to, if you're just trying to make things clear for the sake of making things clear, well, that's not, I don't know how to describe it, but that's not going to result in the best musical experience. I think a great example of an album or a band that is able to thread this needle, leaning into their improved musicianship, leaning into their improved songwriting, and leaning into their access to better production technology, is 1349. I think Hellfire, that album, is one of my favorite examples of an album that uses modern technology. It doesn't just sound like it's recorded in a hollowed out oak tree with a Talkboy recorder or something. It does the same thing to me as these early, more necro, grim recordings do. It's kind of empty in like a kind of a soul-sucking way, but it's not lo-fi. Anyway, sorry, I'm fucking going crazy here. I think if you're Devourment, I think, is on the brutal death metal side. I think Devourment's a great example of a band that has used modern technology to their advantage. I think their newest album is maybe one of the filthiest sounding albums, but filthy in a way that isn't like just, I don't know how to describe it. Just like, not, there are people that just make their album sound like shit because they think that that's what it's supposed to sound like. And there are people that make their albums sound rough because there's a particular quality to it that's important. Same thing why Vitriol sound is always going to be a little dense and a little congested sounding, because I feel like that pressure is what is integral to the experience of the band. So that's my answer.
Okay, and one thing that you mentioned that's interesting is the new album from Devourment, Obscene Majesty. That album is really amazing. It's impressive.
Fucking amazing.
Yes, more than the previous ones, Butcher of the Week, Unleash the Carnivores.
Oh.
I don't like that album. It's more plastic. More plastic.
Exactly.
If we compare with the Molesting, Decapitated, that's raw. It's very, very raw, but love it, the sound of the Molesting of the Decapitated. But the band grow up in the same vein of the Molesting Decapitated with Obscene Majesty. Same raw, same darkness, but with more technology. And with the with the 80 strings guitars, whoa, amazing sound.
Exactly. I'm so glad this is the perfect example. Yeah, I'm so glad you're familiar with discography, because I think Obscene Majesty is probably one of the strongest examples of exactly what I'm talking about. You saw a band that found their sweet spot. Like they reached back to the filth and the aesthetic quality and the experience of Molesting, which to me is still my favorite record of theirs. But they didn't shy away from what the new technology is offering them, because it's still punchier, it still hits harder, it doesn't sound old school. But it's like a modern filth. It's like, what would Molesting sound like in 2022? You know what I mean? Like that's, and I think they learned their lessons from the earlier records, especially like, I think it was Conceived in Sewage. Was that one? Yeah. I think that one was really overproduced.
I understood very, very well that you said Butcher of the Week, Unleash the Carnivore, the Conceived Swish. There, for me, is more plastic sounds, not like the first and the last one. The last one, Ruben Rosas, amazing. In internal growth, amazing.
Oh, yeah.
His return with Brad Fischer in drums was amazing. Well, talking about now, especially from the music, as you can see, and you mentioned it also about the technique. So normally the music grows in time with the techniques, these kind of aspects, and now obviously the media, like me and other kind of media, saying that they are more progressive, technical death metal, technical black metal. A lot of things happen. But as I can remember, the first albums from Morbid Angel, from Cannibal Corpse, from DSites in the 90s, all the time the death metal, all the time at that era, the death metal was and super technical. If you want to play a song from the Covenant, really is very impressive. Of a song from Suffocation from 1991, it's very difficult to play until now. It's very difficult, and nobody used the word technical death metal at that time. Just brutal death metal, death black metal, etc. But now the times go ahead 20 years, and now are the people creating this new label, technical death metal, brutal technical death metal. Even when I hear this music, for your music in Vitriol and Suffer and Become, your music has a lot of technical. It's normally you have a lot of technical because you mix grindcore death metal, death metal, black metal. It's normally they use a lot of technique. So I don't know why that's the only thing that is, some people say that is death metal, but if we resume, it's a lot of technical into music because you mix a lot of the styles. So what's your point of view about now this concept, technical, is well accurate in the death metal? Because as I mentioned, the death metal since the beginning was so much technical than the other styles.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think increasing technicality is just inherent to the genre. I mean, death metal specifically has just always been about pushing the limits. It's like that's what metal does. Every other genre, if this is like the music circle, the metal genres exist on the rim, and what they're doing is they're trying to open this shit up and make it show you what can be done. So it's just a natural progression to keep things moving technically. A great example is Hate Eternal, like fucking 99, that shit came out, and that was about as big of a technical leap as you can imagine, in terms of speeds and density. But they weren't calling it technical because it was just in the spirit of the genre. Mm-hmm. I think for me, the role of the genre technical death metal is kind of, this is piggybacking off my previous answer, that about around my estimation, between 2008 and 2010, metal, okay, right about then is when people who weren't into death metal, you know what I'm saying, like the heart of it, the anger, like they're not trying to push their limits to just show you how fucking more is more. There are people that like technical music, and metal got technical enough to where they started taking interest. And they're like, oh, whoa, like this is kind of scary, but what they're playing is super cool. I wonder, like, I kind of want to do that. So what you got is this whole generation of people wanting to like play drums or guitar that technically, but they weren't necessarily married to the philosophy or the what the music was trying to do. So then we got a bunch of bands that were, their primary goal was technicality. It wasn't like a means to an end, like the bands we're talking about, Suffocation, Hate Eternal, whatever. These bands were technical because that was extreme. Mm-hmm. They weren't technical because they just wanted to show off. They were like, more is more. I'm going to put all these notes in here because it's going to be kind of confusing, and then it's going to fucking build, and we're going to fucking slam it down. It's just going to be heavy and nuts. It's the why, and then when these bands start just being like, like exercise bands that just try to show you how clean and precisely they can play things, that's technical metal to me. That's like, and that's why I don't really like technical death metal in that way. Like, I like Necrophagist, I like the greats, but I like angry music, and to me, tech death is definitively like not angry. It's just about technicality. It's closer to jazz than it is like thrash. Death metal like comes from thrash, whereas I think technical metal is more like, I don't know, music school nerd shit.
Well, Kyle, the sad times are over this interview. It was really a pleasure to talk with you. Really love this new album. It's very a machine on always. So perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans and Metalero followers?
So do I want to what now?
Perhaps you want to add something to your Latin American fans and Metallinon followers.
Yes, please bug us on the internet about coming to see you guys, because then I can convince our manager and our booking agent that we'll be able to pull some crowds out there, because I'd love to make it over there as soon as I can.